Hello, and welcome to Scuttlebutt, the War Movie Review Podcast. We're happy to have you with us as we take a look at films from the dawn of cinema to today. We aim to provide a raw and unapologetic review of each film's cinematography, historical accuracy, and delivery. In the process of analysis, certain details will be revealed. These spoilers are only divulged to ensure a fair assessment of each film. Merry Christmas! We head back to the trenches this week to lay down our arms and join the Christmas Truce celebrations of 1914 with Christian Carion's 2006 historical drama Joyeux Noel. As always, I'm joined by Mike A.
Hello.
Mike B.
Yep.
I can't pronounce French. And unfortunately, Nathan can't join us tonight because he happens to be on a sleigh crossing around the world. So, if you get the reference, you might know who he is. So he'll be with us
Put some
next
lime
year.
in his beard. He put some lime in his beard and he's posing.
A Red Bull in his cup holder, a lime in his beard, and ready to go.
Really quick, Nate, for Brian's sake, Joyeux. That's it. Just say Joyeux Noel.
Joyeux
Just go
Noel.
back to that and just say, joy, you.
Joyeux
Joyeux.
Noel.
No, you don't have to put the accent on it. Just go, Joyeux Noel.
Joyeux Noel.
There you go. Last night when I wrapped this up, I was reading some about this, and I was just actually thinking about that. I was thinking about how Brian was going to pronounce this. Yeah, I was just like, we now are going to watch Joyeux Noel or something. I'm like, yeah.
All you fuckers are bad at pronouncing shit. So,
Guys, what'd you think?
you just said Joyeux.
I don't care. Mike B, what did you think?
Okay. Okay, so the issue is years ago I actually researched what actually happened during the Christmas truce of 1914, right? And there were obviously a lot of misnomers and things that people were saying, "Oh, this didn't happen. This did happen, blah 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 blah." And for the life of me, I cannot remember that, and I didn't have enough time to research that. But I will be able to kind of say the things that I do remember, like the big key points, what the film got okay, and what it lacked on. So overall, people that know nothing about what actually happened, this is an okay representation. Because a lot of people know, like in World War I, you hear about the Christmas truce, and if you're an American, you hear about Bella Wood, right? Those two big battles, those two big things, those events that happened. The Christmas truce was one thing very early, very early. That's what we have to remember, and we'll talk about that. Bella Wood, yeah, whatever, later on. But yeah, the film, in my opinion, like it tried to show a lot of what was going on along the entire line in one place, because this wasn't just like an isolated thing. It kind of happened along that line on the Western Front in 14, and I don't know. It seems like the publicity and the media like kind of focuses on this one, particular place in the line where there's Scots, French, and Germans, and whatever. It's fine, like that's cool, but it was a lot more widespread than people thought. And then the repercussions, the outcome, was actually touched upon in this film, which is okay. But yeah. So overall, it was okay. My initial opening statement, it was okay.
What do you think, Michael?
I thought it was for a PG-13 war movie, which those usually are those kind of those usually don't grab me very very well. PG-13 war movies, and there's a lot of World War I PG-13 war films for some reason. But I thought it was pretty good. I mean, versus history, that's a whole other thing. But just as a standalone, like its own kind of like movie, I thought it was pretty good. I thought all of the characters were really solid. I liked all the characters a lot. I thought they were written very well. and it made I cared about what was going on, and so yeah, it's not like, oh, this is amazing, but I thought it was pretty good, for a fictionalized version of these events. I knew while I was watching, I'm like, okay, this isn't really what happened. I haven't researched the actual Christmas truce, but I could just say, like, I know this is probably not how it went down. Still, I thought it was well done for what it was. That's my thesis.
Yeah, I have to agree with both of you guys, and I like how it begins. Showing them like his children and everything, and how the empires at the time were cutthroating with each other. And kind of the build up to that, and yeah, as I was watching as well, I realized like this is an amalgamation of a bunch of different events put into one 200-meter section of the Western Front. But that doesn't hurt it in any way because like. The more I watched it, the more I'm just like, I can't shit on this movie because it does exactly what it wants to do. It tells you about this incredible humanitarian event that occurred spontaneously, and it just does a good job of it. It's in my opinion, it's really the best Christmas war movie, which is kind of just an oxymoron in itself. Christmas comes up a lot in films. I think of Battleground from 1949. The battered bastards of Bastogne. They had to spend a Christmas in Belgium that was pretty bad in '44. But 30 years later or earlier, it's just interesting to see what happened. And as Mike B had mentioned earlier, we're only 5 months into the conflict, a conflict that traditionally you would be home by the holidays. It was World War I was sold or thought to be as a quick war, and the events of August and September, the Marne and the race to the sea precluded that and made it that it wouldn't be a quick campaign. It would be a very long period of time. And it's very similar to how the armies felt in North Africa between 41 and 43, because these guys didn't want to be there. There were places that they didn't want to be with a war that was too long that, they didn't really know what was happening. It was before the real savagery of, Verdun and the things later on, the First World War, or Lose, or the really bad campaigns of Champagne of 15, 16. So, the war was, in a way, I'd say a little bit of a novelty. I mean, it's horrible. You're fighting here, but we all have more in common with each other than we really think, And the one line that I really like summed it up was, you're not living the same war as me, when he was talking to his higher command. And that's so true, and especially for this era, because the militaries are so, you still have a very big, what do you call it, upper class that are the officer corps. You have the lower class that are really the men. And so it's just very interesting to see that. You're not in the trenches with me on Christmas Eve shivering your fucking ass off. You're behind the lines wherever. So it really does do what it attempts to do, or show what it attempts to do. It's good. And yeah.
Yeah, I like I say, I thought it was had a lot of. I liked all the characters a lot. I think my favorite character was probably the French lieutenant. I thought he was a very well written character, and all the actors too. Like that, not only were the characters well done, but the actors were all really good.
Yep, they brought the sauce. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that impressed me with it. But the one part where I was kind of like, I mean, I like I said, the whole time I was thinking this probably isn't how it went down. The part where I was like, okay, this is very like, as far as I know, far-fetched, is where the German soldier brings his wife to the trenches.
Yes, that's an issue. That's
yeah.
Yep.
That was like, okay, I was kind of, yeah, I'm gonna stick with it, but that's too much.
She's definitely a plot device for sure. Like
right. That seems so unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like, and I see why they did it, but again, it's funny because like the movie as a whole really, it makes like I can deal with it. Like you said, like okay, whatever, I'll look the other way for a little bit. It's a vehicle to get him from the rear lines back to the front, and to see it again. So whatever, but yeah, that's probably the biggest faux pas I'd say in the whole film.
Right, and then like once shit starts get going again, like during the barrage and everything, he's having to like hold on to her, and it's like this feels really out of place.
Yeah, and especially when he was like, "Well, if I go back there, they'll separate us, but if we're here, they won't." And it's like, motherfucker, do you know who you're talking to? Like you're a POW. Like what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, put that guy in chains and give him with the other gray guys. Like what's the woman doing here? Like,
Right,
you don't think the French are gonna separate you too? So yeah, that
Simultaneously, though, again, like I cared about her, like I cared about that. Everything that was really presented in this movie, like I cared about. So it was kind of hard where I'm like, yeah, I can see that, but like at the same time, from a movie perspective, I'm like, I want to see where this goes,
yeah, well, that's just the funny thing because it's like I know what you're doing, but I respect it, and I respect it enough just to be like, cool, good job. Any other time, be like, what the fuck are you doing? This is stupid as fuck. But like, you get a pass because it makes the story so much better, and it brings that humanitarian side, really to light. And I really do like how they have the early juxtaposition of the attack and everything, and which is pretty well filmed, to be honest. I like the French uniforms and everything. That was really cool to see early war. No helmets, like they could have easily fucked it up and had Adrians and Brodies and all that shit.
Well,
But
they had some shit that we can talk about later, but like little details. But like for the macro level of like the details, pretty good. And at that point, the French had realized that the what the hell is the term they call it? There's a special term for the shade of red of their trousers and whatever, but like the iron blue tunics and overcoats and all that shit, and then the red trousers. It was very apparent very early on that was not good, and that's why I liked like a lot of their kepis were covered with these covers they gave them of the like horizon blue, which actually didn't start out to be like a blue color. They wanted it to be gray, but they were also getting some of the dyes from Germany before the war broke out. And then they were like, okay, well, we're going to make a conglomeration of red, white, and blue. And it was funny because the red color was the one they were getting from Germany, like the dye that they were using to dye their trousers. And so it became kind of a gray, like a blue and white color, like my little kepi right here. And so that's why you see those covers on the kepis, right? And it was more earth tone than it was the iron blue and the red. And that it was really cool to see that because, late 14, there's going to be a couple guys that are going to have horizon blue or gray uniforms, whatever the hell they called them. But most of them are going to be wearing the old school, like we were just talking about, the red and the iron blue with some modernization factors coming in. And that was really cool. They portrayed this in this film. Is like, it's still very early war. And they had the brass buckles. They had the the French specifically. We can talk about the Scots and everything, but like the French had the original black leather with the big brass buckle. They had all the early war gear in this, which is very cool. And it was very accurate to late 1914.
It's a cool looking uniform.
Yeah, it's just like it's something you don't see. And again, they could have easily been like the hell of the First World War, shelling constantly, and mines and like all. They could have really made it into a later thing, and they kind of did, say a few things that were off. Like when at the end of the film, like you're going to Verdun, and it's like that's a quiet sector. You're gonna go live in a fort, cool. Like that would be great.
Yeah, late 14. Yeah, that wasn't even a thing yet.
Yeah,
and then Tannenberg as well, like
Yeah, on the side of the train, it says Tannenberg.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, so that's kind of like revisionism, not revisionism, but like
mainstreamism
2020.
Yeah.
Where it's like, these guys didn't know where the fuck they were going. Mm-hmm. They didn't know what it was going to be because it was late 14.
It's like, let's use names they know, like who's going to remember them?
Well,
like,
exactly.
Going to the Marne, like what the fuck is that? The river? Like, it's just not known well today. But still, even
Correct.
that, I'll give it a pass. It's like, okay, you use the name people know. Good for you,
Yep.
I wish you would have said champagne. That would be cool. But whatever, it's the way it goes.
Yeah. One thing that I was kind of, and it wasn't really clear until the actual truce started, would actual, like, once the lines have been drawn, would actual trenches German and then, French or Scottish, I mean, was there ever a time where they were that close? They seemed very close to each other.
Yes.
Okay. Wow.
A lot of times they were 50 yards. They said 100 in the film. A lot of times these lines were 50, 60, 70 yards away from each other.
Okay.
So the artillery, like in this film, was not this constant thing. It was, I think they portrayed that exceptionally well for early. It was there, of course, but it wasn't like this constant thing. And then when you start to get the constant artillery later on in 1915, the lines start to get farther apart because,
Okay.
you know what I mean? But as far as at this point in the war, yeah, 50 to 100 yards, it's not unrealistic at all.
Okay, that's what because I was like, because when I saw that, I'm like, man, they seem really close, and I thought, I'm not gonna say that's inaccurate though, because I don't know. So that's
Well, it's
that's-
funny
that's
because in
crazy.
18, I'm sorry, Brian, one more thing. In 1918, when the Americans got there, you see those distances closing again to go from 4, 5, 600 yards or meters rather back to the 50 to 100 meters. So yeah, it's very interesting. Yep, Brian.
Yeah, no, it's cool because, you know, you always expect it to be like Omaha Beach in the Somme, where it's like a fucking incredibly long run, you know,
Yeah,
and that
acres
was,
of
yeah,
land.
and that was true, you know, like I love that in, what's the Kubrick film?
Paths of
Paths
Glory.
of Glory, yeah, you know, that's awesome, I love it, and that did happen, but the early war, you know, is different, you know, every year of the First World War is completely different than the rest in certain ways, but there's a really good memoir called Poilu, which is a translated memoir from Louis Barthas, who was he was a very interesting character. He was a communist, and then he was conscripted, and he ended up serving on the Western Front for 4 years. And this memoir is amazing. It's a little tricky to read at times because it's translated from his diaries, but he talks about at some points in the early part of the war where the trenches are within grenade distance. So like you could just be like
Yep.
walking along a trench, and all of a sudden like there'll be a grenade attack, you know, where just grenades land
Yep.
in your trench, or you do vice versa. And it's just crazy to think about that because we have this idea of, you know, you have this huge football field separating you, but that wasn't the case at the time. And even how the trenches were very, very primitive, which is correct, you know. The race to the sea, you know, the trenches are probably 3 or 4 months old at the most, you know. They didn't mention where they were, but because the Brits are there, they're probably like in the middle of France, you know, because the British were in the north.
That
and
sector would
then-
be more up towards Belgium,
yeah, like you know,
right where this film takes place. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, like, you know, east of the Somme, but northwest of the Marne. You know, it's because I don't know if people really know that, but it ended up being the Canadians, like in the very far north around Ypres with the Australians and stuff, and then the Commonwealth, Ypres, and then the Commonwealth going down. If you look at the map of the Western Front, it looks like a big rectangle for the German lines that cut into Belgium and northern France. So the left side of the rectangle would be where the Brits were, and the bottom line of it would be where the French were, really to the Swiss border. That's
And,
where
and with
term-
that, talking about this is yes, the Western Front went from basically the Baltic Sea, right, like
the North Sea.
the North Sea, yep, down to Switzerland. And when you look at the actual map, it obviously changes in those 4 years, but it goes, you know, 400, 500 yards, and then you look at this sector and it's 50 yards apart, and then it goes back to 400 or 500, and then 100. You know, depending on where you were 50 to 60 yards from the enemy, like their actual trench line. And this being very early, they, like you said, they portrayed it very well. The trenches were very hasty. It was, well, we're just going to sit here for a little bit, and then we're going to advance, or they're going to advance, and then we'll just dig new trenches. Well, obviously that led, you know, it didn't work out that way, but like that's what they thought in 14. Again, you said 5 months. You know, the guns of August, right? So we're at, you know, it kind of kicked off in July, but like really kicked off in August, and now we're in December of 1914. Well, it's very new. Everything's very new, and that's why, like, a great point, Michael. Obviously, like, I love that. Because, yeah, 100 yards, nothing at that point. Nothing. So,
Crazy, yeah.
Yep.
People usually don't think about that.
And they touch on that a lot in the movie with like the alarm clock going off. How they all know about it, you know. And
They're like,
things.
we're used to that by now.
Yeah, and they're like, you're changing guard, and it's funny how people make assumptions, you know, and how everything in the military world has to be military relation, you know, because you know,
Right.
whatever. So it's it's cool to see that, in little things. And yep, just World War One is not what we think it is, in the mainstream. It's not these
No,
huge,
it's
big, broad
definitely
attacks
not.
all the time.
Exactly, and it's very extremely nuanced depending on what year, where you were. Because again, the Western Front is one front out of like 9 or 10 that existed.
Here I am in
like
Gallipoli.
big fronts. And it's like World War One. Like they're portraying this, which actually happened, which is cool. But it's like, yeah, this is one tiny piece of what was going on in late 1914, and then you get escalated in 15. Yeah, Gallipoli happens. The Dardanelles, that whole campaign happens, and
Thanks, Churchill.
it wasn't just him. He gets blamed for it, but like it wasn't just him. But like anyway, and then it looks a lot different later on than what we see in Joyeux Noel. Is we see the kepis, we see the pickelhauben, we see the visor caps, like the early war shit. There's a lot of technical shit with the uniforms, which we can talk about in a bit. But like, yeah, you're not going to see this modern warfare shit at this point, and they actually did that very well. So
It was just, for me being a helmet nerd, half of me was torn, like, oh, I don't get to see cool helmets. But the other half of me was like, oh, that's cool. And it's because it's so rare that you see, like, modern armies, like with, modern brass cartridges and things, not like, in a Boer War or like a whatever situation,
exactly.
without helmets,
Yep.
So it was like, oh, shit. It so just really put that in there. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, there is a, like, there's like a steel plate inside some of those helmets, or the hats, the French at least, or am I wrong with that?
That was an experimental kind of thing.
Okay.
They did it in 1915. It's
so
not going to be at this
transitional for their Adrian. They were like, how do we stop head injuries?
Yeah,
Okay.
like the Germans were doing the same kind of shit. They were experimenting with like the gated detachment, like the little thing you see with like the nose. Like they're experimenting with like skull caps, right? That's the French had. It's called a skull cap, and that was not going to be at this point of the film. It's going to be in 15. 15 is when everything really started kicking off, like with heat. Everything that you think about the First World War that's fucked up and like brutal started in like mid 15, like late spring, early summer of 15, and then it was just game on from there. This film is portraying late 14, which is literally the best way I can describe it is the end of the old world. The old school warfare and the uniforms and the combat style clashing with what is now new. And so that's why you still see all the uniforms and all that shit. They have the Lebel, they have the Gewehr 98, all that shit, all the new rifles, smokeless powder, small caliber, very accurate rifles. But you're still seeing, and kind of the old, like, also the formalities, which is very important to where, like, you see the officers are communicating with each other. And it's like, okay, if the officers want to have a meeting, we're good, nobody's shooting, right? That's kind of the formality. It's like, okay, they're all talking, bam. And so it's like, again, it's like, it's this old world of shit combining with the new, and the cataclysm really happened in 15. This right here is right before that all happened. And so, yeah.
I like that a lot about it, though. Like when the three officers all kind of come out to talk to each other at first, it doesn't seem like that. I mean, it is kind of like, very tense and like what's going to happen, what's going on here exactly.
Yep.
But like they do it in a way to where they don't feel like it's a completely foreign concept,
Correct.
which I like that about it, to where the guy comes up, they immediately like salute each other.
Yep.
And I love seeing that shit. That's just cool. Like the respect,
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, that's the old school coming up. Yeah.
Their psyche had just not adapted to the war yet, because again, like
Right.
it had been such a short period of time. And a lot of these pre-war officers, if they were in the army before the war, because that's a big question, conscription and stuff, they had maneuvers together. Like there's this funny story I just read from a war correspondent memoir where they're in North Africa and they captured this Italian officer, and this is during the offensive of December of 1940, the first real big British one. And this Italian officer says in like very good English, like, "Are you from blah blah regiment?" And this guy's like, "Yeah, I am." And he goes, "Well," and then he named his commander. He's like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I used to hunt trap with them all the time." So they ended up taking this guy to the officer, like to the HQ. They got drunk that night, and they had to wake him up in the morning and say, "By the way, you're still POW." Because like again, he was just he was an adjutant or like a attaché or something, and he was in England for like 5 years in the 30s, and he just made all these friends, and so these things happened, and they happen again. So
a movie that really is that really touches on that, which we've talked about, is The Grand Illusion.
Yeah,
and that's really what the whole movie is about that like respect that these guys have for each other, mixed in with trying to kill each other. So that's another one that we'll have to talk about later.
for sure. Yep, a gentleman's war.
This film actually did a good job of like saying, when the German lieutenant and the French lieutenant are talking, and they're, the German lieutenant says, "Hey, are you from this street?" And he goes, "Yeah, how'd you know that?" Again, Europe is very small.
Right.
Okay. It's like basically like the state that I live in is the size of Germany, right? Which is a country, right? It's huge. And in Europe, it's like before there's conflicts and wars going on, yeah, of course, Germans are going to go to France. French people are going to go to Germany. They're going to, like they show in the film. And so they know, and that's another thing that like,
they speak each other's languages. Yeah.
Exactly. And it breaks down the barriers even more so to the guys sitting in, which is also alluded to. It wasn't like pounded into your head, which I actually kind of respect, but like the whole of these old guys sitting here making us do this. Mm-hmm. It was alluded to. It was suggested, but it was never like pounded into your head.
No, it was not Paths of Glory territory when it came to that.
It was just kind of presented. It's like, this is what happens. Not like, look at it,
It's presented as like, this is what happens, but like, of course it does. You already know that,
Yep.
Which is,
right, and that's the thing is like, and then when you get these guys that are, hey, can you give these letters to these people, like get it through the Red Cross, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, because they all know at that point they realize, oh yeah, we're pawns. Like they know that, like they get that, and they understand that, like the propaganda of like, oh, the Germans are the Huns, which is a funny propaganda story in itself. But like, anyway, they're the Huns. They're subhuman. They're fucking barbarians, whatever. And then they get to see them, and they're like, yeah, they're really not. And so. To tie some historical accuracy from what I know of the actual Christmas truces, plural, that happened in this time period, yes, they actually did interact with one another, like they showed in the film. It wasn't to that level per se, from what I've researched and whatever, and from what they played football, right? They heard soccer for the Americans.
Yeah.
Yep. They played football. They played. They exchanged
FIFA 14
photographs. Except the Argentinians weren't there.
Messi. Yeah, right.
Right, but no, it's like they played football. They exchanged photographs. They, whatever. They were trying on pickelhauben and kepis and all, like whatever, all that shit. And then afterwards, what they showed in this film was actually they should have, in my opinion, gone a little bit farther on this, because it shows them post the armistice and whatever. Yeah, we have to shoot each other. We know this. They were shooting up in the air. This was recorded to have happened from the Germans, the Brits, Scots, and the French. Like the guys they knew, there were assaults right after Christmas, right? They were coming full on across no man's land. And the attacking force, which was, I believe, I'm going to get called on this. I believe it was the Germans that were coming across to try and take the trenches. And the Allies shot in the air, and the Germans were not shooting at them either. They were shooting up in the air, just making noise. This was discovered by some of the guys that weren't there for the truce, weren't present for that, but like on both sides were like, what are you doing? Why are you not killing them? Which was alluded to in the film, right? That one Scottish commander, or British, he was speaking with a British accent, but like going, "Hey, no, shoot him," but in real life it was shoot them because it was like a huge assault, and they weren't doing it, and that's when they started going through these letters and these things and like realizing, okay, shit took place that we don't approve of in the high command. It's not good. And these guys were again they were reassigned to different areas on both sides because they're like, we can't afford to take this many guys and just try them for treason and kill them, right? And so they were moved to different sectors, and it was like a dishonorable thing. It was like a shameful thing to these commanders, but they didn't seem to give a shit, to be honest. Like in my research, they were just like, whatever, fuck it. And I mean, a lot of them didn't make it through the war, but it was like you said earlier, Brian, it was a moment of humanitarianism. It's like, we're people, okay? It's Christmas. We both celebrate that. We know that. So let's do this. And then, yeah.
What I really liked was the interactions in this film. Like, you know, once they started to war to each other, and how, you know, people don't always understand each other languages wise. Maybe, you know, the officers do because they're cultured individuals. You know, they have the ability to have gone to school and learn that. But the bakers and, you know, the regular layman, how are you going to communicate? So like the guys kissing the photos, you know, just like little things like that.
Yep.
But what I really like too, and you know, I'm not trying to be religious at all, but you know, at the time, mass was always spoken in Latin, and then they would say it again in your home language. So you always kind of had an understanding of Latin, and that's why when they had the mass, I thought it was really cool that it's like, you know, you might speak like you might be a poor illiterate French guy that speaks your dialect of French. You might be a poor little German guy that speaks your dialect of German, but you all go to mass and you all understand this colloquial thing, and you can all get that. So I thought that was really cool, and I could see how like maybe the priest was a little annoying at times, whatever, but I feel like overall it was very good, and that was really cool. You know,
You thought the priest character was annoying?
I could see how you could paint him like that. You know, like kind of like he'd like the allied female character, whatever. But they did a really good job of just having him be like, you know, here. I just feel like in any other film he would just, you know, it wouldn't work. But
okay,
I actually didn't see that either. Like I'm with Mike on this. Like I didn't think that he was annoying at all. I think he could have been a lot more.
Well, that's what I mean. You could have painted him like that in the picture, like. But I feel like the way he does things is great, and also how like like when he takes them through the long way through the trench, like So in a way, you can see that's a little hokey, but it works really well in this thing. It's funny, like
one also.
Let's finish it. The filmmaking that they use in this, again, really only works for what they're doing, which I love. You know, it's like it's this great bubble of, you know, it works well here, but it wouldn't work well, I think, in any other production.
Maybe. Because like, you know, there was one good line that the priest said when I don't know if it's the bishop or somebody wearing purple in the church, right?
Oh yeah.
Because he goes, "This is the most important mass I've ever spoken," and that was like a very powerful line. Of like, if you understand, like, this guy's a man of God, right? He believes he's a man of God and he's a good person. He's been through the shit and all that stuff. And the way he's portrayed is he goes, "That's the most important mass that I think I've ever spoken." And I would agree, you know, and like that. But yeah, it's it also shows like how the church can be very swayed by political notions and things of that time,
right?
And can be used,
Which is why it shows him walking away from the cross as he leaves, you know.
Because he figures it out. He's like, well, that's not... No, like, he's a good person. Like, he's a really good person. He believes in his religion, and he believes, like, he's a man of Christ, right? Like, if you believe all that stuff. And, yeah, to see that, and then he's just like, oh, well, it's being manipulated. Like, this whole... Everything's being manipulated. And... I like that because there's a lot of subtleties in this film, a lot of them, and I do appreciate the hell out of that. Like it's because usually you either go one or the other. You go, "Oh, I'm going to punch you in the face with this, and you're going to understand whatever," or it's just not there, and like, what are we doing? But like, it was very subtle, and like, if you see it and you're looking for it, you'll know.
Absolutely. And talking about the officers and like all the communication stuff like that, like Brian, what you're saying, I do like how the officers, when they do communicate, like it's kind of random. Like sometimes they'll speak in French, sometimes they'll speak English, and it's just whatever they're kind of feeling in that moment. That's always what I've noticed with people who are bilingual or speak different language. They'll kind of just like switch on and off without really any reason.
Well, it's
Yeah,
what
it's
you're
really
talking about too, and like your level of proficiency with the language, and because French was a language that was spoken by, it was like the language. Like Russians spoke French, Brits spoke French, Germans. It was like, okay, yeah, I'm in this class. I can speak French, yes, and the French weren't expected to reciprocate per se, but it was still good for a French person of decent class to learn English or German, and they actually portray that very well because, they go back and forth, like you're saying, from English to French and sometimes German. And it's like, and it's whatever the conversation can be spoken best with. And they portray it very well. So,
traditionally, let's get this in. French is the language of the royalty and the nobility. And like, for example, in England in the medieval times, the kings and queens spoke French, and then commoner tongue was English. If you're fucking a poor piece of shit, you spoke this amalgamation of Anglo-Saxon languages that because English has so many different roots from just people making a language and not
the Nordic
really
languages. It's tribal.
While French is a very its own thing, and so traditionally it was always, oh well, if you're a cultured individual, you will thus, speak French. So,
and that was especially true in the late 19th and early 20th century, which is shown in this because, it's like, I mean, again, the Russians, like the Romanovs, they spoke French formally. Like when they were having important meetings and stuff, they spoke French. They're Russians. They speak Russian, but they spoke French,
Even to the point, too, where the Imperial Russian Army got Moise Nagants originally from French arsenals. And they got pistols from French arsenals. Because where do you go for the best things in the world? You go to the most cultured nation and empire in the world, which at the time was France. From the late 1700s.
France had a shitload of money and invested a shitload in Russia, which didn't have anything to do with them getting involved in the First World War.
What are you talking about? So,
but anyway, that's
this guy likes this guy. This guy likes that guy, and these two people hate everybody. Oh fuck.
Well, France had a shit fucking ton of money invested in Russia when the First World War broke out, and whatever we can get to that topic at a different
Hey, Nicholas,
time,
baby, what are you doing?
Nick, what are you doing, buddy? Come on.
I hear Poland's great this time of year.
Yeah, let's go to East Prussia.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Go to East Prussia. Don't think nothing of it. Don't worry about it.
10 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers. Berlin's not that far away.
There's this town called Tannenberg. I tell you can hold that son of a bitch. You can take that. Don't worry about it. Nothing. Oh!
You get a port. We get a port. It's good for everybody,
It's good for everyone. No, everybody's a winner here. So, and also, we want to return on our investment when you get the chance.
I didn't know that
It's
Joffrey...
okay, Nick. It's okay, Nick.
I forgot that Joffrey's from North Jersey, but,
Oh, shit. Yeah, that's basically Joffrey. Well, no, because Nicholas wasn't a cocksucker like him. Like, he wasn't an asshole. That's his problem. Like, it was his fault. He wasn't an asshole. He was just a nice dude. But anyway, we're getting into shit. But like,
weak men create hard times.
Strong men also cry.
Okay. Oh my god. That goddamn
anyway,
Chinaman stole my legs in Korea. Anyway.
What if I hit a J?
Yeah. Right.
What makes a man, Mr.
Oh, that's
Lebowski?
the Little Lebowski Achievers Award. Oh, don't touch it, please. Yes.
So, culturally, racially is very cool.
I dig it.
Oh my god, I love that movie.
Oh, so but anyway, so getting back to this, what the fuck are we What was I babbling about before?
Well, just alliances and things and stuff, and how
Yes,
people
the
will
alliances. Yeah.
people will use anything to get your population to kill the shit out of those guys. Because at the end of the day,
Right.
these guys from Scotland, these guys from France, and these guys from Germany, they didn't start the war. They didn't care about shit. It's the politicians or the upper echelons, everyone involved, and everyone fights a different version of the war. So it was just very cool, like we were saying earlier, just to see that top-down progression and stuff. And also you have so many things going on in the West too at this time. Like they were talking about the Belgian atrocities the Germans committed. That was a very big thing that later on it proved to be mostly propaganda. So you have that going on.
Oh yeah, there was
in
a couple
England and
isolated
stuff,
incidents, and it was like that's where they're the Huns. Yep.
So I actually don't. Could you elaborate on that? Because that sounds very interesting. I don't really know where that started exactly.
Let me find the article.
Yeah.
It was. Go ahead and talk. I'm gonna find this.
But no, it's just it just goes to show how who is the real enemy. We just have so much in common. Why are we killing each other and beating our brains in? The further you are from the front, the less you understand the problems. So
Yeah, well, one thing I did like about it, how even though after they've done this, the Christmas truce and all that, but as it kind of progresses, the truce, as it were, like some little things start to seep into where it's like, okay, well, we still are like enemies. Like the German says something about like, oh, when we invade, Paris or whatever like that, and he doesn't say it in a way to where like he's trying to
Right.
not necessarily be an asshole. He's just saying it because like that's what he's programmed to think, and he just says it as like a matter of fact way. And there's little things like that. It's like there's a part where the guy who was he crawled out there in no man's land and he went into a hole.
Yep.
And then once the truce happens, the German guy tries to offer him a bottle, and he's, even though the truce is going on, he's like, "Don't touch me, get away." Like, okay, fine, we're not shooting, but like still.
Also holding a rifle that definitely was not even designed at that time. But
we'll get into that.
We'll get into IMFDB later. But
so the Hun thing actually was very earlier than this, and it was resurrected during.
Was it Franco-Prussian? Was it that old or?
No, 1900.
Oh, interesting.
So, in 1900, Kaiser Wilhelm II, the best leader or whatever, the crippled little fucking wannabe, gave a speech to German soldiers heading out to fight Chinese rebels in the Boxer Rebellion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So he goes,
expedition.
Right, and so for you guys that are listening to this, it's a fun thing. Quote, should you encounter the enemy, he will be defeated. No quarter will be given. Prisoners will not be taken. Whoever falls into your hands is forfeited. Just as 1,000 years ago, the Huns under their king Attila made their name for themselves. One that even today makes them seem mighty in history and legend. May the name German be affirmed by you in such a way that no Chinese will ever dare to look cross-eyed at a German. All right, that's his quote. So he was comparing the German soldiers going off to fight these guys as Huns, Attila the Hun, right? Like take no quarter, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so then the British, I know it was the British that started this shit, like the propaganda, were... after the whole Belgian propaganda thing, like there were a couple incidents of German soldiers doing fucked up things. A couple, like isolated incidents, because people don't realize that the German military is very, very disciplined. And if they find out about this shit, they will fucking deal with it. Okay, so things happened. Okay, it got to like be, they bayoneted babies and whatever. It's like, well, that wasn't actually official, whatever. They did some fucked up things as civilians in a very small level. And then the Brits, when they got involved, reluctantly, by the way, because the Brits and the Germans are very good friends with the royal family. Oh, weird.
Everybody's related.
Right, exactly. And so when they got involved, they were like, well, the Germans, they're bayoneting babies in Belgium. They're the Huns. The Huns almost took over Europe. Oh my God, it's a propaganda thing. So, but yeah, it was, they just threw out Wilhelm II's words in his mouth and made it a propaganda campaign. And they successfully won because most of the fucking allies or Entente powers called them the Huns. And it's like, well, they're German soldiers. Like yeah.
I never would have guessed that was the origin. I would have thought that it was like from something for 14 or 15, but that's very interesting. It actually has its basis in Germany during, of all things, the Boxer Rebellion.
Right, in 1900. Yep.
Which is
And
fascinating, by the way.
Well, it's just, it's propaganda. And I did learn that in my history class for World War One in college, because my history professor was absolutely fucking amazing. And I did learn that, and it was like, when I learned that the first time, I'm like, oh my God, it makes so much sense.
That's very interesting.
You know what I mean? It's fucked up. And so. But that's,
you never
that's
know where the real root of things are,
Right, that's where the term, the Huns, come from.
Interesting. So Attila's turning in his grave. It's like, oh, they're comparing me to that cripple. God damn it.
Right. These guys were nothing compared to my fucking warriors. Nothing.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yep.
But so that's where that comes from.
One other thing I did like to see was that when they were, removing all the bodies and the remains and stuff, how they kind of showed the different cultures and how each nation dealt with their dead differently. Like with the Germans, they break the dog tag and they put it in the guy's mouth, and then like the French, they take the whole dog tag off and stuff. And I thought that was interesting. It wasn't just like they're all bodies. They're all they approached that whole scene in a specific way.
Yeah,
and I like that.
Yeah, exactly. There were a lot of like really good details they got right. Like small, really, really weird details, and there were just some details that were very obvious that got overlooked, and it's just like, what the fuck are you doing?
I also, from a just production standpoint, I thought the look of it was really good. It looked really good.
Absolutely.
All the shit, all of the uniforms and everything like that, the trenches were all like looked really, really good, and they were photographed really well. So in terms of just a filmmaking point, I think that they showed a lot of the shit off really well. You could tell they gave a shit about what they were doing.
Yes. Yes. And this is 2006, right?
Yeah,
2005 or something.
And then 6 it was commercial released. So
it
won at Cannes.
Yeah, around that time. Yeah, and they tried to tell the story, and a lot of the like super dumb technical shit was wrong, but like I get it. It's the internet was like brand new then, like not brand new, but like like
and like how many sources online could you find at the time?
That's what I mean. Like it's you have to know somebody. And
back when Windows had like a gray background,
a turquoise background.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Well, Windows.
ASL.
I mean, dude, XP was like the best. But I remember rocking 2000, 98, 95.
Yeah, I remember that shit.
Oh.
Good stuff. Gray. Yep.
We're old, Brian.
I can tell, yep. And then I would just get on LimeWire and destroy computers, so,
See, you were a LimeWire.
Song.
Did you ever have Kazaa?
No.
I've never even heard of that.
It existed up there in the Midwest, eh? No.
Oh, no. Kazaa was a lot more than the Midwest, You better believe her. But yeah, so, let's talk about the interaction. And the guy is coming out, and it's like at first, from what's recorded in actual history, like what actually happened, a lot of it got deleted and fucking gone. But like, they just kind of came out and were like, hey, Merry Christmas, fucking one day. And they did that thing. They sat down and they talked. Even though they couldn't speak the language, you could still do body language. And there were some pictures that survived, and the very famous ones of the guys, like the guys wearing the Pickelhauben, and then the Brits wearing their shit, and then you see a couple of pictures of like Brits wearing the Pickelhauben, because like they're so fucking funny. They were like, hey, hey.
That's one thing that I see a lot from like footage from World War I, or like when they take prisoners, they'll like jokingly take their hats off and put them on or something like that.
Yeah, because they just couldn't. Nobody knew why they were wearing a fucking hat with a spike on it. It's a Napoleonic like thing. It's like very old school, and it became decorative and whatever, and like
That's why I bought my
obviously-
pickle helm, because it's cool. Like, you know, it's like that's the
Well, right.
real reason I want it.
Originally, those things were designed to for infantrymen to deflect saber blows from the head. Because
Oh,
if you hit that spike with the curves and everything that's got on it with a saber on a horse or whatever, it's going to deflect and kind of go down and not hit the head. Right. That's
Okay.
the original reason for that spike, and a little outdated in the First World War, but nobody knew that shit. The French were wearing kepis, the Brits were wearing berets and service dress caps. You know, like
Those they're not steel, are they?
no, they're
Leather.
boiled leather.
Right, that's what I.
They're rock
Yeah.
hard. And
So they are
also-
hard, but they're not like steel
yeah,
hard.
and also too,
No, Christ.
they had mostly covers on. I don't remember seeing a pickle helm without a cover.
Yeah. So when
originally-
you went to the front, every time you went to the front, if you were on campaign, you have a cover on your pickelhaube, right? And the numbers. This is a technical error that they did in the film. The numbers were not like on a patch that were on the front. I know why they did that for the film, because the costume designer was like, "Oh, you just have to get these on as fast as possible." No, they would actually have. So the red numbers were for active duty units, right? And they would actually just be sewn straight on, like the actual numbers themselves, sewn straight onto the cover, worn like that. Reserve units would have green letters, right? Or like reserve, or like, not frontline units would have green numbers. And then in 1915, like very early 15, late 14, the active units that were wearing the red were like, well, shit, the green is less visible. And so in 15, all the numbers that you're going to see on the Pickelhauben covers are going to be green. But like very early on in 14, yeah, you're going to see the red numbers for the like active units, like the regular army units. And but then they went to green. And then in mid 1915, they started taking the spike off. Because
Well, they have the trench model that has a vent, and then you could take the spike off.
Yeah, the
right?
1915. Yeah,
That's the one
you
that
can
I
just
have. Yeah.
pop it off. And there was also steel, or iron rather, fittings instead of brass, because they needed the brass for other things. So they made
Yeah.
steel fittings with gray, the 1915 version of the Pickelhaube. And then the Stahlhelm came out in late 1915, and they started replacing that. But you still see Pickelhauben being worn by German units through mid 1916, because it was all the supply thing, like, all that stuff. So, but in this film, though, yes, they have the covers on, and they have the red numbers, which are on a patch. It's not correct. Literally, the covers are correct, but like they would just be like the numbers would just be sewn on to the
Into
cover
the
itself,
cover.
and not this big square patch that you can see very obviously in the film.
Now,
So-
if the covers weren't on, though, it's interesting because, there were 32 different states in Germany, and wherever
Yep.
the unit came from, they would have a different shield on the front. So they literally had
Yeah,
32
Wappen.
different shields. And also, they had cockades that would go on the
Yep.
the chin straps, and they were all different. And I only know this because my pickle helm comes from the state of Baden. And it took 5 fucking years to find the stupid yellow and red cockade to go on the helmet.
Yep.
And it's incredible all the different diversity that they had.
Yeah, in
the
peacetime,
military
it's
and
fine.
colors. Oh yeah, it's
In
great.
peacetime, it's fine. But in wartime, they were like, fuck. And that's why they started just issuing the Prussian cockade with the German, like red, white, and blue, or red, white, and black cockade, because they were like,
Yeah.
okay, if you got the Wappen from Saxony or Bavaria or Braunschweig or whatever, that's fine, but like, we're not going to issue that shit. We can't do that. Yeah, it's very... it's so interesting, like the actual, because like that was the thing, is like the U.S. by the time they got in there, the French and the other Entente people had been like, well, yeah, we know what unit we're fighting against, or like where they're from, based on their Pickelhaube with the Wappen on there, and also on their Feldmützen, like the chef's looking hat. They have the German cockade on top, and they have their state cockade on the bottom, right? So they got two bullseyes, basically.
Like on the red stripe.
Yeah. But the red stripe was the 1910 model. Like a lot of them would have a camouflage band, but like your cockade, your actual state cockade would be on that band. I mean, I can go get these things, but like yeah. So you got the German cockade up here, and so that actually past the Pickelhaube being worn with the cockades, like you're talking about on the chin strap bales. That was actually another way that they could tell, okay, this unit's from Saxony, this unit's from Brandenburg, this unit's from fucking, East Prussia, whatever. They could tell by that. So the Germans started covering those things up in like 16.
They didn't want to, yeah.
Right. And
yeah. And didn't the artillery have a ball instead of a spike?
On their Pickelhaube? Yeah.
Yep. And were there any other variations to that as well, or 'cause that's the only one that?
Well, there were like the cuirassiers, like the cavalry guys, like the Uhlans. They would have a Pickelhaube with a fucking square on the top.
Oh, really?
Again, made to deflect other cavalry saber blows while you're on a horse. So yeah, the Uhlan Pickelhaube would have a giant square that was angled down to the right. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, and it was weird, yeah.
And that's different than like the lobster tail Pickelhaubes that I've heard about. Like
the lobster tails are metal.
Stuff, and
those are made out of iron, and those were
big braided
a lot
chin
of
straps and stuff. And
decorative for the most part. But a lot of the cavalry guys, like the cuirassiers, who were wearing steel breastplates during World War One, very early on, they would wear those. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And they would wear those, and then they realized that bullets go right through them. And it's just weighted, and it's just...
Yeah, I want to go back in time and grab one of the Berthiers. I'm just going to say that now. One of the Cuirassier ones. Specialized carbine, but yeah.
So yeah, that and so like in this film, they actually portrayed it correctly. Like the 93rd Infantry Regiment, let me go see where they're from really quick.
Again, it's just really cool to see, because late World War I is all gray and khaki and stuff like we had just talked about a few weeks ago, All Quiet on the Western Front, and it has nothing like the depth of uniforms that this does. And even this does a good job at early war. It's very general, but like in reality, like we've been talking about last 10 minutes, like it's just crazy, all the colors and shit. And
I mean, it would have been fucking awesome if the new All Quiet started out looking like this,
Yeah, right.
If they wanted it to go, throughout the whole war.
Oh, so 93rd was actually a reserve regiment. Cool. But anyway, yeah, so what happened is like so in 1918 you're going to see uniforms from 14 being worn. That's what they had, right? So you see that late war German is actually a lot harder to do correctly as far as like living history and all that shit than early war, because early war, you got the 1910 Blusen, and then the 1910-14, which is like you get the Brandenburg cuffs and your buttons might be subdued. Okay, that's like 14 and 15, and then in 15 the Feldbluse comes out with the Reseda green collar, no pockets in the front. It's not no buttons, all that shit. And then it gets more complicated from there on. But like they issued that shit throughout the entire war. And the German uniforms in this film, it was funny because they had a lot of the 1910 uniforms, which is correct, with the cuffs, the red piping, which red was actually their piping for infantry at that point in the early World War I.
When did it change to white?
17.
Is there a reason for that, or?
I don't know exactly.
Because red became artillery.
Correct. Yes, exactly. But like at the beginning of the war, it was red piping for infantry.
Does it have to do with maybe the regimental number? Or well, no, because
I don't know.
Would have.
Yeah, I don't know. I've asked that question before, and I have never gotten a straight answer as to why it went to white. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know at this point.
If you happen to know the answer to this question, please send us a message at 69 Washington Way.
Send us a telegram.
1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington D.C., United States.
Yes.
But yeah, it's so that did change. And in this film, they have red piping, which I appreciate, because I was like, they're gonna have white on the shoulder straps. They didn't, and that was good, because in 14, infantry is all gonna be red. and they had that piping everywhere, and it's like, okay, cool. They had the brass buttons, and it's like, okay, yeah, on the 10 and the 1014 series uniform, you're still gonna have all these buttons. They might be painted, but in 14 they're not gonna be painted. That was like February through March of 15 that started to come down. Like, you got to paint your fucking buttons, paint your belt buckle, blacken your fucking leathers, all that shit. That came down in like 1915.
And it's interesting too, just to talk about everything, with the film. It's just like this, like, after the Christmas truce, January, February of 15, you're in the war till the end. This is not going to be a quick campaign. Like the honeymoon is over. Like, even if you could say that, like really, like we mentioned earlier, all the bad stuff of the war really starts in 15, and that's because I think this people were locked into the fact that we're in a death struggle now. It's not going to end. It's not going to. Only arms are going to end this fight.
Yeah.
And it really just show for all the sides. Helmets, like you're saying, painting, buttons and things. That's interesting, because that's an army that's like, okay, we have to change our ways. We have to adapt to this new reality, and here we are. And and really, the Christmas truce is the death of, wow, why are we fighting? Why are we here? And then bam,
that's
hang
it,
your
because
fucking buttons so that some guy in a fucking canvas suit doesn't shoot you in the face. Like,
right. And in 1915 and subsequently, they tried, like the truce tried to be a thing, but the commanders were like, nope, no fucking way. If you do that, it didn't happen. After 14 was the last time that actually happened, where it was like, all right, everybody's going to come out. We're calling a ceasefire for 24 hours or however the fuck long they said. Nobody's going to be shooting each other. Let's just fucking relax. But that was a problem because the high command on all sides who found out about this was like, oh shit, if they don't want to kill each other enough, and they're actually going to be, if this is possible, that's not good. So we need to up the propaganda. We need to up the ante on making these people think that these other people are just going to fucking kill them at, whatever. And it was everybody. They upped the ante a lot after this. So yes, it's a beautiful human thing, right? But the fallout was taken by these idiots that control the wars, I guess, the countries, and it was taken as like, no, that's not going to fucking happen again. We need to make them hate more.
Because there wasn't like a remember Pearl Harbor. It was like, oh, a Serbian guy shot an Austrian, like, mid-ranking crown prince, and now as an Englishman, I'm going to kill Germans.
Well, I mean, that's just kind of that's just like, England and France would just go to war sometimes, I mean,
but there was
before, but like that's just how like war was. It's like, okay, the war happens,
yeah,
it wasn't like
we're telling you these guys are bad.
Yep.
They're horrible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like, that's really, like, if you really want to get into it, that's what the commoners were told.
And then it turned into, we haven't told them enough that they're bad enough, so we have to tell them more that they're bad.
Yeah, up the ante.
Yeah.
Yep. No, okay. And then, these guys are bayoneting fucking babies in Belgium. These guys are doing this. It's like, so it escalated a lot. Because, like we were saying, like, you're only 5 months into the war at this point. And there's people that are still, like, somewhat sane. Mm-hmm. They've experienced death. They've experienced the war. But, like, it's new. And then, if you go from 1914 Christmas to 1918 Christmas, even though the war had ended at that point, it's like the carnage. Like, you can't come back from that. And the world has not. That's the problem.
And in those 4 years, how different of a world it was,
Right.
I mean, you had American troops spending Christmas in Siberia. Like, it's just so insane when you really want to, talk about it and how much it changed the world. And this really was, like you mentioned, Mike, the death of the old world. And I like how they alluded to that, like, with the kids and with even the photos from the turn of the century. I thought that was really interesting. Because, again, people view history as black and white. But no, these amazing color photos were made in the 1890s, early 1900s, in the early teens.
They're people like us.
Exactly.
People like all
Yeah.
three of us. Like they're people. They were people. Like I think when you get into black and white, people get disconnected because they're like, it's so old. That's so long ago.
It seems like another world.
Yeah,
Right, exactly. And it's people. They're just people like us. And whoever's listening, like, yeah, people existed for a long time, and unfortunately, and fortunately, this kind of shit can happen. This big conflict of they're bad, but also what's good is people are still God damn, I just had the word in my head. People are still cognizant enough to also realize maybe there needs to be a really good reason why I want to kill you. You know? And so I hope that gets to a point where it's like, you know, whatever. But like this film, it shows that human side of people, and it's really cool how they all drop their rifles and they're all wearing their gear and everything. They're all wearing the uniforms, but like, hey, they're people, and they got that.
And I did like the scene too where they're disarming the like weapons they pick up off the ground. You know, they're all one round, which is funny. But you know, because you can tell there's like one blank or something. But I still thought it was interesting. It's just like, oh, we're not just like, you know, we're gonna disarm everything. You know, like we're totally at a truce. We're not gonna have any situation where somebody could pick up a rifle and shoot someone. Like, no, we're just vibing.
Right. That's the problem for the higher ups because they're not killing each other.
Well, it's like to touch on what you said, Mike. You know, who dictates who the enemy is? You know, men or their governments? Because again, we have so much in common. That's what I hate about, you know, things today. Not to bring it to now, but like people are so polarized for no fucking reason. If you sit down in a room and you agree to disagree and you work through conflicts and you're like, we have a different opinion, but we're both Americans or we're both whatever. Who cares?
And we agree on 95% of the shit that we're talking about.
Exactly.
That's the thing is like
You know?
we're pretty fucking similar, and that's the thing is like it's this game, and unfortunately, it seems to be a very common pattern in human history for 1 point however many million years we've existed. It seems to be a very common pattern, and it's like, how do we break it if we can, or are we just gonna keep repeating that? I don't know. It's just it's funny, like, and so yeah, this film, like, I could forgive a lot of the like technical shit, whatever. Y straps on the Germans. No, even in late war.
I was gonna ask.
I
you
thought about that.
Yeah.
What?
Was it internal or something? They had an internal system.
No. So they actually didn't have. So the German kit all depends on your belt buckle. That's it, like that thing. But like, so the German kit at that point in World War II was dependent on the tornister, the pack, right, holding everything up. Well, if you're not in marching order, your tornister is dropped wherever the fuck you're living, and you've got a lot of weight on these two ammo pouches and your e-tool and your entrenching tool, your shovel, and your bayonet and all that shit, and it pulls down. So what the guys started doing in the First World War, again, adapting modern equipment, is taking their bread bag strap and putting it over their neck and then putting it on their pouches. Okay, it distributes a little bit of the weight. Y straps, that was a couple people in the First World War bought them custom made. Again, upper class. And it was not the norm. If you're going to see anything load bearing, it's going to be mainly the bread bag straps holding the ammo pouches up the belt. Y straps were a thing that was talked about and introduced obviously in the 30s, right? With the whatever. But no, they're not going to have leather Y straps like they did in this film, and a lot of other World War I German films do that. No, not going to happen.
I've seen both of those done too. I've seen the exploding like fucking pouches falling down, and I've also seen the bread bag straps. But just to add on to that, for anybody that knows a little bit about German kit, like in the Second World War, the K98 pouches are nice. They hold 30 rounds, 3 pockets of 10. In the First World War, there's 3 pockets of 15 for 45 rounds each. So it's you have, what is it, 30 more rounds of 30 more rounds of ammunition, and it's a lot heavier.
It's heavy.
So you really do see, and the pouches are huge. The Finns used them in the Second World War, and you see how big they are and stuff. And so you can only imagine, like, okay, nothing to hold it down, blow, It's like, fucking you. It's a lot of weight and not a lot to support it. Those leather
You
belts
either have to
suck.
you have to like tighten your belt up to like the point where it's uncomfortable, or you figure out something with like a bread bag strap or whatever, and it's like, good luck.
Hey, I mean, not a surprise, that kind of ingenuity comes into play,
Yep.
with something like that.
Option B.
Yeah, well, absolutely, yep. But yeah, it's so that was one thing that I noticed is like the Y straps. Nope.
How did the Brits look? Or the Scots, I should say. I don't want to
From yeah,
Just in general.
we're not English, we're Scottish.
I like that line, yeah.
Well, that's very true. There's a very big difference. But like,
yes.
you also are still in the UK's military. You always have been. So,
What color of
I
the
know,
flag
Scott-
is yours?
right? yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, the Scots. They were on the PO8 webbing. I don't. That's not my area of expertise at all. They were in the Glengarry caps, which is Scots wore those throughout the entire First World War, even though they would have the Mark I or Mark II Brodies, like from 17 on, they would still wear their Glengarries. Winston Churchill was actually put in command of a Scottish regiment, and he wore an Adrian helmet that was gifted to him by a French general. But he wore that thing, and they were in a relatively quiet sector, even though there was still action going on. Once in a while, they have artillery. But he wore the Adrian helmet, and then the Scots didn't like him because he was a British gentleman, right? But he actually was a really good combat leader, Winston. Like, because he said, okay, the thing that's like burdening you guys the most and like fucking with everybody, including himself, was lice, and he's like, I'm gonna declare war on lice. And he actually like started getting they actually started eradicating the lice from the front lines. And the Scots were like, this guy's fucking stupid, but like, hey, we're good. And he actually, Winston actually, long story short, proved himself to be a good combat leader. And they allowed him, they allowed him to wear the Glengarry. And he's got photos wearing the Glengarry. As a Scot, to bestow that upon a British gentleman, it takes a lot. But like, Winston was good at what he did, and he was just fucking real. That's the thing, is he was very real. And so as far as the Scots, their attitude, it's concurrent with what I've read and researched. They were like these supreme badasses, like everybody. Oh, the Irish and the Scots. Right. No, they were just good soldiers, and they had a lot of shit going on. So Glengarry's, at that point, I don't know if they were still wearing their combat kilts. Some units did that, some units didn't. Some wore trousers, whatever.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. Before I forget, do you know what Churchill's first war was?
The Boer War. The Second Boer War.
He went there as a war correspondent with a fucking broom handle Mauser.
Yeah, exactly.
He had a cone-hammered broom handle Mauser, and he got captured by the Boers when they raided their train. But he's always been this crazy character that shows up in warfare. And it's like, let's go. And so it doesn't surprise me that he got a very good combat record as being a leader of men.
Well, it was after Gallipoli when he was one of the people that was blamed for that. Mm-hmm. And they were like, you're going to go to the front. And you're now a battalion commander. You're a lieutenant colonel, or as the British say, a lieutenant colonel. And you're going to go and you're going to run this battalion of Scots. And it was about as shitty as you could imagine for him.
Oh yeah.
Because like the Scots were like, fuck you, fuck yourself.
And then 23 years, or however long it is, then he comes back, into the Prime Minister of England and stuff. And then he's like, let's do Gallipoli again in Greece. And it fucking failed just as miserably in the Second World War as it did in the First World War.
It's just, the guy's
keep
not
that man
perfect.
out of the Aegean, whatever you do. Keep him out of that.
Yeah, keep him
not a good time.
out of the fucking part of the world. Yeah,
no, not a good time.
But no, he was. Here's the thing: is like, we should do an entire podcast on him and do a bunch of research, because here's the thing that I respect about him is he was a real dude. He knew who the fuck he was, and everybody else did around him. They knew who he was.
There's this great series of books by Richard Atkinson called Liberation Series, and it's all about the war in Europe. And he's got 3 books, and it's like he goes into amazing detail about how horrible the fighting in Europe was, in the Mediterranean and everything. and you hear about like these really horrible events in North Africa, like guys freezing to death because they don't have any overcoats, things like that.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
yeah.
Churchill will show up in Iran for like the Tehran or the Iran conference and stuff, and then they'll lose him because he got drunk because he always would wear this big giant like coverall like to relax in, and like they literally lost the prime minister like all the time. And,
well,
like,
he drank lethal amounts of booze every day.
Yeah, if you look at his schedule, it's like Hunter S. Thompson's. It's like how?
Well,
but
yeah, people have tried to keep up. Like they've actually done that. Like for a day, they're like, gee, but he drank scotch with soda, and so it was diluted, but he was still getting fucked up. But like people that drink a lot, they're like, all right, we're gonna try this out, and then they do his like daily routine. They're like, I'm like at the end of the day, they're like defeated. They're like, I'm really fucked up. I don't feel well. I don't know how the fuck this guy made decisions for the fucking world.
They talk about like he came up with the idea for Husky while he had a horrible migraine while he was drinking at like 3 a.m, and he called. He was in Africa as well, and he called like Eisenhower in, and everybody dreaded the 2 a.m. Churchill war sessions because he'd be like,
right.
"How are we gonna take Mussolini out of the war?" And like, why is Gandhi not dead yet? Or like all this crazy fucking shit that he would come up with at literally like 1 to 3 a.m.
And that generation of guys were the ones fighting the First World War.
Yep, he was one of the last Victorians. He lived through the First
Exactly,
World War,
exactly,
and he was able to live to at least show that lifestyle of the 1890s.
Exactly, and the French lieutenant was actually very well done because he was everybody, especially Americans, like I'm guilty of it. We think of French as pompous asses, right? They're French. Oh, they have their lifestyle, whatever. No, in the First World War, they, not getting into the macro politics of their upper leadership, which has always sucked militarily. No, him as a French leader, he's pompous to an extent, but it's very controlled and it's very realistic. And he's like, fuck, I know what's going to happen. He gets nervous. He fucking pukes, like, goes out in like when they're going to do the assault, and he knows what's going on, and he was portrayed very well. The Scott, I think he was a first lieutenant or whatever. These guys
Gordon.
are like lower enlisted. Yeah, I think. What was he?
Gordon, I think that was his name. I didn't catch his
Yeah,
name.
but like I think he had two diamonds, so he's a first lieutenant. I can't remember. So I'll just call him a lieutenant, right? And also the German lieutenant, right? They're all very similar, and I love the fact that they actually show that when they're talking to each other. Like, they're all on the same level. Like,
yeah, that's one thing I wanted to say about this movie was that this is one of the only movies where the French are not depicted in a slimy way in any kind of way, because they're usually either they're in some way or another they're usually depicted as cowardice, or they're like backstabbing,
overzealous,
or overzealous. They're like super pompous and shit. But this, like I said, I think the French guy in this was my favorite character out of all of them.
Yeah, no,
Like-
I can see why. Yep.
Like in Paths of Glory, where at the end of it he's like, "You've been after his job this whole time." It's like,
Yeah.
like why is there's always the Machiavellian plot?
The French have always get just fucking the shit. They always get the short end of the stick in every kind of representation of them.
Legit. And just before I forget it, I just want to say something about Churchill lastly. So you'd mentioned the Americans view, Europe or the continent, whatever, in a certain way. Well, it's interesting because, Churchill's mother was an American. So he had this very interesting look on Europe because he had some of her eccentricness, but he was also steeped in this Victorian class. So I think that's one of the reasons he stood out, because his mother was a singer and stuff, and she was very popular in the States and went over, and somebody even would refer to him as like, oh, our British American. Like, because he had some
He could also
from
see the bullshit.
West.
Like, he could see the European, the bullshit. And it's like, yes, even though he was a part of that, but he also knew how to navigate. And I think we should do a separate podcast on our opinions of him, because, and De Gaulle, we can go on with these guys. Fucking loser. But like, I mean, not to convey my opinion of Charles de Gaulle. Great
There's a
leader.
film called Young Winston that we can talk about, which covers him during the Boer War, I believe. So, actually, you know
Oh
what?
shit!
We could do The Darkest Hour, which is a great movie. I love that movie, and we can really get into.
I've not
Churchill and
seen it.
everything.
I've
With
heard it
Gary
was
Oldman?
good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I liked it a lot, and that has
I
him
haven't seen it.
He's in the bathtub half the time as well, because it's Churchill. And it's May 1940, and it's like it's very well done, and actually, so yeah, we'll come back. To
So okay, yeah, we should do
Churchill.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Circle back, but so this the last thing I think we should touch on before we start talking about guns,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and toward the end is how the government's dealt with these, you know, mutineers or whatever you want to call them. Like
Yeah.
they touched on it in the film, like, well, we'd court-martial you and put you against the wall, but you can't do the 200 men. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like it was just too big of a problem, or too big of a mutiny, whatever you want to say it was, for them to really deal with. Like later
Yeah.
on, the French army deals with a real hardcore mutiny of a communist mutiny in 1917. That, you know, they deal with those guys in a much different way. You know, like they make sure to kill the leaders and everything. But with this event, it's just interesting, you know, because it's the first real like mass, you know, disobedience.
5 months
you know,
in.
Yeah,
Yep.
just 5 months in. So, you know, they showed it a little bit in the movie, but so like they did like move these guys around and stuff and just
Yep.
you know, put them in different places. Was anybody actually like tried for anything like this, or does it
I don't know.
kind of swept under the rug? Okay, so
I don't know.
there's probably one Belgian shoulder that went against the wall, but you know, like
I honestly, like, my opinion, like, I don't think they knew what the fuck to do. None of them. Not the Germans, the Brits, you know, the Commonwealth basically, and the French. I don't think they knew what to do at this point. I've not seen anything about people being tried, but like again, that's why I say I don't know, because it's it's weird. It's a lot of the ex post facto. A lot of that shit was brushed underneath the rug permanently. Like there's no way we can know, because all the records possible that would make everybody look bad were just didn't happen. It's amazing that we even know that this happened. You know.
well, through the letters, like you said, you know, which also I love that part of the movie. I thought it was really cool how they.
Well, a lot of them got
put in the
scrubbed.
letters and stuff,
That's
and-
why I say it's amazing that we even know about this. And there was like a couple guys that survived and corroborated all that shit. And again, you can't take their stories as fact, because again, either they're going to embellish, they're not going to remember correctly, or whatever. Like it's just so whatever. But like
a lot of
so yeah,
a lot of times in history, you know, things are recorded like this due to guys getting wounded. There's a famous story of, you know, there's a Pan Am clipper that flew into Wake Island like a few days before the second Battle of Wake Island, and they took some wounded Marines out with them. You know, and those were the guys that told the story of Wake, the real story of Wake, not the propaganda story and everything. You know,
Yeah.
Because even there was a story where like they said that the last thing that the commander at Wake said was, "Send me more Japs." 3 years later, when they got him out of a POW camp in Tokyo, this reporter asked him, "Oh, why'd you say that?" And he goes, "I didn't say that shit. That was the last thing we wanted."
Right.
Fuck, you know, and
Right.
So you know, maybe it was some guys that were wounded right after Christmas or during that period that then, you know, they
Yep.
got through the censors and went home and they told this humanitarian story that grew up into a bigger picture. You know, because again, this is
Yep.
early in the war. So many guys that stayed in the front didn't make it. You know, even
Correct.
a few weeks,
Yep.
a few months, whatever. So it's just fascinating how these like little granules of facts get out. You know, and are persist. But a lot of them get shot down too. So
Yep.
Cool. So I think it's time to go look at some guns. What do you
All
guys
right, I'll pull it up.
I'm glad we're gonna look at this, because there was, I swear, like the German machine gun in this was, there's something
Yep.
very wrong.
There's
with it.
something. There's fuckery about. There's fuckery about, Michael.
Yeah, I was like,
So-
okay, good. I was like, there's, when I thought, I was like, that can't be right.
But it took me a while to realize that, though, so I'll give him that. I love the revolver. That was I really like that touch. No rubies, no automatics for the French. You know, it's early. I know what Mike's going to talk about, but
Okay. No, it's like I can. Here's the thing with French is I can say it. French sucks to spell. It's awful. It's so fucked up. But as Brian says, Joyeux
Joikes.
Joyeux Noel.
Bo.
All right. Yeah. So we got the Mas.
1892. These
Yep.
are pretty interesting too because they were designed for cavalry troops. and that's why they open up to the right. You're supposed to shoot it with your left hand and load with your right, if I remember correctly.
Yep. And then they realized, oh, it's actually a really good revolver.
And then it's a stupid design.
Yep.
But they are great. And they share a lot of simulators with the 1895 Nagants.
Yep, except for the gas seal. But, like, yeah, they... Well, again, like we were talking about the other night, is like Leon Nagant was a Belgian firearm manufacturer. So, like, a lot of the influence of, like, that time period in the late 18th or 19th century, you're going to see that. So, yeah.
They were brothers, and they eventually made a conglomerate that became FN, as we know today. But, I didn't see the Lugers. That's interesting.
When he's recovering the weapons, he picks it up for a
that's
second.
interesting.
Clears it.
That would have definitely been there.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The Mark VI did not come out until 1915
So it would have been a Mark IV then.
Probably,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. The snub-nosed ones.
Also, they say... Yeah, so it's in a holster. They're assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the problem, is they're assuming.
It's not a towel wrapped up to look like a revolver.
Right. So, okay, yeah, this is fun. The Berthier 0715, yeah.
Now, the Berthier, there were two basically French rifles of the First World War. There was the Berthier 0715s and the Lebel 1886s or M93s, however you want to call it. The 1907 Berthiers, they were full-length rifles, but they were the Senegalese model, and they were for colonial troops. So seeing French line troops without Lebels is totally wrong.
So, oh God, this is a whole episode in itself.
There was the O2 Indochina.
No, the Berthier model started again as a cavalry weapon.
I was talking about the rifles. Yep.
Right, so the 1890 carbine. The 3-shot carbine was 1890. They had the 1892, and the 07. That was the rifle, and you're okay. Yes, you're correct because God damn, I wish we had Matt on here. He could tell us all about this. But like, from what I know is the 07 was kind of an experimental, like they were fucking around with that design, and then they had the so this model right here is actually no, it's an 0715. So the Senegalese model was this rifle with the carbine bent bolt.
Yep.
Right. And the 0715, they started producing them in 1915 to try to, let's see, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, yeah, so it was like a stopgap thing.
Yep, mass-produced rifle for their
not widely used at all, even at the end. Like, that's why they gave the 368th and 369th, the Harlem Hellfighters, Berthier rifles, because they were reserve and second and third line rifles. You know, that's why they gave them those. They didn't give them Lebels. They got a couple, of course, but they issued them these second and third line rifles because they were like, yeah, we don't like them and whatever. So yeah, in this film, not gonna happen.
I will say this though, they did have the correct 3-shot ones. At least they didn't have the 5-round magazine ones you see later on. So I'll give them that.
Again, the rifles, if they would have had an 1890 or an 1892 carbine,
yeah, it would have been more correct.
Maybe, but these rifles, it's not correct for this film at all.
Yep.
Not one bit.
And just a random side bit that Nate can cut out, but Sean has a real Indochina that came back from Vietnam. It's fucking so cool.
Yeah, these things made it around the world. They're good rifles, but it's fucking funny. Okay, so it says here, blah, blah, blah. The appearance of this is an anachronism, in two ways. The first, the 0715 was introduced in early 15, to colonial troops, the Senegalese guys and the French Foreign Legion, blah, blah. Regular French infantrymen were not equipped with these rifles until 1916 to do the short. Yeah, so okay, they got it, but so it's.
That's one of those blue covers you were talking about too.
Yep, the blue covers for the Kepi. Yep. But yeah, so this rifle's not going to be in the fucking. That's unrealistic as shit. So, the number 1 Mark III, actually, okay.
Oh.
So the number 1 Mark III Star came out in 1916. They took away the volley sight and all that happy horse shit, and that's what you see the number 1 Mark III as. These guys would have had volley sights and all that shit. They would have had number 1 Mark IIIs.
They just have straight threes. That's not the biggest in the world.
No, it's not. But like, yeah, these
At
are
least
all
they're not
stars.
floating Charger bridges or Lee Medfords, so I'll give them that.
Right, but like, yeah, they got the number 1 Mark III. That's fine. But like, little technical shit. Yeah. Okay,
Those
so
volley
let's see
sights
what
are
they
so hard to
wrote
find
here.
today.
I mean, I should actually probably read what they write because they're probably just Scottish shoulder believes estimate star frame. Okay, yes. Fuck. All right. It's validating my own ranting too. So, yeah. So the star is 19. Well, late 15. All right.
Great rifles at the time too.
Yeah, not bad.
First real time
the
the
gr-
number threes were used.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
The action was perfected in the Boer War, but it was really,
Yeah, the Lee
mix.
Metford and then the Lee Enfield. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, they give her a 98.
I wanted to play with my G98 when I watched this because it's been a while and I forgot how much I liked them. They're great rifles,
Yes.
even though they're fucking, spears.
There were a bunch of Germans that had a Mauser long rifle, but wasn't a Gewehr 98. Yeah, they don't have pictures here.
So I
but,
think
like,
the next one is a different type of.
Oh, the
Mauser.
9822. Yeah, okay, yeah, there you go. You're correct. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so the
Oh, yeah, flat
9822.
tangent sights. You're right.
Probably the best long Mauser rifle besides the Persian 9829. But yeah, so the 9822. I used to have one of those. Fucking awesome rifles. But yeah, these definitely are.
It's a K8B. Didn't even notice that.
Yes. Okay. This is what you were talking
Yeah,
about. Mike.
I was like, when it showed the handle, I'm like, what the fuck is that?
Yep.
I was like, that's a fucking 240. Fucking fire
I was
control group.
surprised. They didn't do the worst job of it, but they from one angle
It
you
was
could see
bad, dude.
it's
It was
oh.
bad.
That is a fucking first for me. I've never seen them mock up.
Yeah,
I've seen
right
them
here.
mock up things like.
Yeah,
you
that
know,
was
other-
bad when you saw it
Yeah.
from the rear.
I've seen them mock up other guns like from the time period to look like certain ones, but never a fucking like modern
Yeah,
machine
it was
gun.
it was really
That
bad.
first sequence, though, I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, now I see it that there's a gap and everything, but like,
Oh, this fucker?
No. Well, I mean, from the rear, but in the first combat sequence where you see the water jacket, I can't. It was
Yeah,
so
of
quick I
course,
couldn't
of
tell.
course.
So
Well,
they
but
did a good
still,
job
like,
early on, but yeah.
there-
The barrel is right in the middle of the water jacket, which is it should be on the lower
Well, and that's
part.
the thing is like they were trying to make it look like an 0815, which again would be very early. Like this, no go. They're gonna be using a fucking 08. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
it is what it is. But when I
bad.
saw this, I'm like, that is a 240
Yeah.
grip. Oh, that's a fucking receiver
Yeah.
of a 240 or a Mag 58. Oh, the butt stock. What the fuck?
Yeah,
the-
that's a first.
The
Yeah.
stock is what caught me, and I was like, oh, okay. But that
Yeah.
funny though, when you see the left side of it though, in that second shot, it's not that bad. It's really hard. No, the one above that one.
Oh yeah, hold on.
The one that has
Like,
the sink,
if it was
Well,
that
no,
really
it's
quickly,
bad
that
because
would
then
be hard.
it's trying to be an 0815, and it's like this is late 1914. Like
Oh,
You know, with the-
I
with the
see.
bipod, you know what I mean?
Oh,
yeah, it didn't exist at the time.
I
No.
got you. Yeah.
yeah,
okay,
so yeah, they're
We're
trying to
talking
make
two
it something
different
that was
things.
later, and yeah,
In this
it's just-
shot, if it had a 15, it would look like a great prop 15. I'll say that. But it's wrong regardless. So you're right,
correct.
it was
Yes,
an MG08,
yeah, for the year.
so.
If it was like a 15 or on film, like okay, I can believe
It
that.
wasn't like a PKM with an MG34 barrel shot like you see in every
No.
Soviet film. So
It was
but
just
that's right.
Yeah, it was one of those things that got fucked up really
Yeah.
bad. So a Vickers Mark One. All right, yeah,
I didn't notice that.
I don't
right
think it's
there.
used at all.
right there. Just looking through
That's
it.
cool. Yep.
But yeah, they would have had those. The Hotchkiss 14. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It might be a little early because they were just starting to buy them and everything.
That's what I mean. Like,
What was the other one? The
It's-
Saint Methole? No, that's the tank. What's the other 1907 machine gun they want to pay royalties for? It's like a Hotchkiss, but the piston goes the other way. I forget what it's called. It's
well,
the
Hotchkiss
real.
14 was like one of the most popular.
Yeah, but they started buying them 14. But what was the other one that they had? The other machine gun in the First World War.
The French.
Yeah, It's the competitor to the Hotchkiss that they bought because they didn't want to pay Hotchkiss for his royalty fees.
I actually don't know off the top of my head. Huh.
It's called the Saint Etienne.
Yeah, Saint-Étienne it's like saying Springfield or Winchester.
Yeah, but no, 1907.
So the Saint-Étienne 1907.
Yeah, that was what happened. Was they wanted to buy the guns from Hotchkiss, but Hotchkiss wanted too much money for them, so they designed the gun in a different way, where the gas system goes forward instead of to the back. And then the war started, and they're like, oh fuck, and they just bought Hotchkisses. But the Saint Etienne 1907 was a machine gun made by the state arsenals for the French military, and they were very common. I think that's what actually been more common at this point than the 14 Hotchkiss. But
yeah, could be, for sure.
so, do I know something about World War I that you don't? I'll put it in the Scuttlebutt chat.
Chalk it up, and
Hey,
enjoy.
broken
Enjoy,
clock's right twice a day.
enjoy the feeling, you fucker.
Well, I just have I'm a francophile, so sorry, but I put it in the Scuttlebutt.
Yeah, no,
That's what they look like.
it's totally like, okay, so you're putting that in the they're very similar, and I think
it just comes down to a different gas system, and they didn't want to pay Hotchkiss for it. So it's because I love mechanical ways firearms work. It's the only gas system that pushes forward to reciprocate the bolt backwards, which is it's used as this amazing camming like clock wheel. It's really crazy. It's like the G41 of the French army. And then they're like, hey, we got that money for defense fund. How's it going, Mr. Hotchkiss? So,
they used a bunch of those. Like they didn't have like a Maxim, style machine gun, which the Vickers and whatever it was like, designed off of. So like,
do you know the reason why they didn't want to go for water cooled? North Africa. Where the fuck are you going to find water in the desert for the colonial wars? So they wanted an air-cooled machine gun. So that was the idea.
Yeah. These big, heavy fucking things. Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Yep. So that was the idea.
All right. So the Citron
the World War
model
I
1916.
I know we've talked about these in the past and like how unreliable they were and stuff. And
well, yeah, they had the impact or the percussion. I don't know. You take the cap off and you pound it on something and it starts the fucking reaction.
Like the Japanese grenades at the Second World War.
But yeah, it's 1916 now. It's way too fucking early again in this film.
Yeah, I like how they mentioned that.
So hand grenades actually, in 1914, hand grenades were not a big thing. They had like the old school, like light it with a fuse and like throw it. They had those, but like hand grenades really started to become a thing in 15 again, like we're talking about.
When did the Mills bomb come out?
15.
Interesting, because that was like the standard of grenades for a long.
Yeah,
time.
the number. Well, they had the number one. The number 5 is the most common.
I didn't know
one.
they had different iterations.
Oh God, yeah. Like, yeah, the grenade. Oh Jesus Christ! There's people that like specialize in World War I grenades.
Ordnance collectors are insane. Oh my God,
dude! But like they you have to like specialize in that. There's so fucking many, and they're so intricate, and like it was all experimental. And like again, it was just fucking insane. But like so like the Germans, their stick grenades, their first like actual like university adopted one came out in 15, and it had a fucked up like the fuse, like to prime it and everything, was a pin on the bottom of the stick, and it would get caught on shit, just like the F1 grenade. Like this, you see, like with the fucking fuse, like you drop it or whatever, it would fucking start firing, and it's just stupid. And like by 1917, though, grenades were really kind of getting more refined, like they are today. So
on point. The one thing I don't understand is why they got rid of the clip on the German stick grenades between the First World War and the Second World War.
Yeah, I've thought about that
idea.
Well, it's added fucking weight. It gets caught on shit, and they're like, well, we can just tuck it in our belt.
True. Bandoliers too. You see Germans in the First World War with bandoliers, and then it's not a thing in the Second World War.
Well, the paratroopers had them, but yeah, you're right. Like the infantry guys didn't. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I was like, yeah, they went away from bandoliers.
Because it's funny to watch like West Front 1918, and like the guys all have bandoliers, and they look
cool over the shoulder.
And then it's like 1945 Germany, they're like, oh, where's the box of ammunition? The cardboard box of ammunition. Like, it's like, maybe you should make a cloth thing with pockets, like the rest of the world has had, and your army had 20 years ago. But it's
Right,
just
and
interesting. I
yeah,
don't know why they
that-
moved away from that.
That's a fun subject. Like, why did they stop using bandoliers?
Well, yeah, it was all battle packs, you know, like you had
It was a
your
It was a
patrol and
German
everything.
specifically because the Brits and the U.S. and the Canadians and all like that. They still use bandoliers.
Well, yeah, well, Michael asked that question in the D-Day episode, and he asked if Brits had bandoliers, and it's like, yeah, they had the one pouch with 2 bandoliers, you know, and you take your ammo out slowly, and then
Well, the
guess what?
Brits
You
also
get
had
2 more.
bandoliers. Like they
Yeah.
would wear them. Like
Yep.
yeah.
But it's all
And,
part of the doctrine.
And I mean, the U.S. fucking wore bandoliers through the first Gulf War, actually through Iraq.
Yep, you got the battle packs and everything, reload kits
Yeah, like
and stuff.
yeah, we would get our ammo in bandoliers
Mm-hmm.
on clips and everything. It's like, and then you just throw magazines in there. Like in Vietnam, you could throw the 20 rounders in there. Like you can't do that with the 30 rounders. But like
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, why did Germany just decide, oh, we got our little pouches that we reduce the number of rounds and chargers that we have in our pouches. We don't need bandoliers. 'Cause it's like the Americans in the Commonwealth, they use their bandoliers first before they use their pouches.
So I guess the first prerequisite of blitzkrieg warfare is you have to get rid of cloth bandoliers. Then you can unlock, you know, mechanized warfare. So maybe we're the idiots, but it
Yeah.
is very interesting. Why did this thing
Well, it
that
is interesting,
utilitarian go away? You know?
That's another one of these nerd conversations, you know? Like, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good point. Like, why the fuck did they not use bandoliers when everybody else was?
Well, sorry, go ahead.
No,
No,
I'm good.
I was just saying,
make a joke.
and did
Okay.
for whatever.
One thing I was just thinking, because we brought up earlier the tornister and
Yeah.
all that, and one thing I've just recently have thought about, because did Germans have those at all in World War II?
Yeah.
Okay, because
Tornisters?
I have seen,
Early
yeah,
war, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
because I've seen some depictions where they do have them.
Well, and
then-
bandoliers are actually part of your required packing for the tornister, like inside the
Okay.
tornister. Yeah.
Okay, but like it seems like it's usually a World War I thing, and I'm like, why? It just seems like so much better to have that rather than your fucking bread bag and your shit and all that. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. The German doctrine changed a little bit. The coolest thing about the tornister is the fact that it's your pillow. That's why it's like fucking lined with horsehair. Like, it's awesome.
Oh, okay.
And but they moved away from that, and then they adopted like your classic rucks that would go on your Y straps that were horrible. Like if you ever worn them,
The
all the way it
A-frame?
goes to the bottom. Well, they had the A-frame, which is a piece of shit.
Yeah,
And
no,
then they also had the
had a
later
ruck
ones
that
too.
was just
They had
fucking
rucks that would
terrible.
attach, and like all it does is you see guys like, or a lot of POWs wear them because they have all their clothes in them at the end of the war, and they just like sit all the way back. It just destroys your lower back, and it's just
Damn.
really painful. And yeah, the Y straps are great by themselves, but when you attach something to it, it's just horrible. You know, it's like
Okay.
tornisters are a really good backpack, but it's not a good support system, and Y straps are a really good support system, but not a good backpack. You know, so it's this going back and forth. If you notice, no other army after the war adopted something that goes onto your Y straps or your LBE. It's always a rucksack and your LBE. You know, so
Okay.
but and I was just gonna make the joke. If you happen to know the answer to the Waffenfarb question and why the Germans happened to get rid of bandoliers, please send a letter to
There's a lot of mysteries come up in this.
History's
Yeah.
Mysteries. You know.
Yeah, it's just weird.
And it usually happens because guys didn't write shit down. Like, you know, why the fuck would I write that down? I want to talk to my loved one or this, that, the other thing.
Yeah.
Right, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, it's so trivial. It's just inconsequential. Like, why the fuck? What is a bandolier?
Yeah. And
Why the
again,
fuck would I care? You know?
and this is so far out there, and we'll bring it back to the First World War in a second, but, like, you know, I'd always laugh at reenactors that try to go spend a night in kit and they fail horribly.
They
And
can't.
and they don't know why. And it's because they don't know the tricks of the trade. Like, if you read memoirs, you see that they had to deal with the suck as well. They had to deal with the cold and everything. And my favorite one ever is that, so in your gas mask bags during the war, there was something called a gas sheet bag, which is basically the idea was that if there was chemicals in the air, you'd put your gas mask on, you take this big giant, basically like a plastic
Yep.
tarp, and put it over you, and you would be protected. Well, it didn't take fucking rocket scientists to realize you can line a foxhole with that. So that's what guys would do. So you have all these reenactors that go out there, they don't wear the white socks, they don't take care of their feet, and their feet freeze because they try to sleep overnight, and they have to leave events early and stuff. And it's like, that happened to them, and then they did these things that got them through the night. They got them to tomorrow, that made their life easier. because there's a million different tricks that, living in the woods. You talk to anybody that's like a backpacker or a hiker and stuff, they have their system that works. Well, so did the GIs, or whatever army. Just putting on the uniform of the era and saying, I'm a soldier, and not knowing any of the tricks of the trade, you're just like a fucking stupid replacement in 1944 or 45. You're going to fuck yourself up because you don't know what you're doing. So it's just really interesting, these things that, somehow get recorded and we learn about how they dealt with this stuff. Because if not, if nobody writes down the fact that, oh yeah, that plastic sheet in your bag that you're never going to use for any other reason than to line your foxhole is great for this reason. Well, if that's not talked about, then that's lost, And here we are wondering. It's like all these mysteries about Romans, and stuff. Like, we don't know what the Roman tunic color was because nobody wrote it down. There's paintings on like Trajan's column where it's like, look, it might be red, but is that a parade or is that warfare? So it's these things that are just lost. And that's just, history's mysteries. I was even talking to somebody the other day. This guy is a Civil War reenactor, and he's starting to get into World War II. And he's like, I don't understand why we don't know so much shit about things that happened 80 years ago. And it's like, because nobody wrote it down.
It's not what was at stake at the time.
Yeah, nobody cares about stupid shit. But when you're a real historian and you find a stupid little line, you're like, oh my God, that makes so much sense.
Was that you or was that somebody else? Like, you're like, or they were like, hey, who made your fucking IOTV in Iraq? And I'm like,
that's my joke. That's always my joke for people
like,
that
I don't
are like,
fucking know.
Yeah. So basically, everybody's like, oh, we know everything about this, that, and the other thing. So I like to ask veterans, I'm like, who made your canteen cover when you were in Iraq or Afghanistan?
Who the fuck knows?
Well, the Uncle Sam gave it to me. You wore it every day. Are you telling me that you put something on your body for a year and you don't know who made it? Wow.
Correct.
You're a good soldier. And it's just a joke because it's like, you don't fucking
exactly.
know. The army gave it to me.
That's the way it is.
Like,
it's
like,
you have to, I don't know. And here's the thing is, I was into that shit.
Exactly,
I was into that shit, and I still don't fucking, If the world's fate relied on who made my IOTV, like the contract and all that, I looked at the tag. It was made in 2008. I know that. But like,
wow.
But like,
tell me the NSN number, motherfucker.
100 something, because that's what most of them start out with. But no, it's like, yeah, I couldn't fucking tell you. Like, it didn't matter because it was like, okay, it's a fucking piece of gear that I have to just carry, like a fucking M1 1923 cartridge belt.
Yep.
Oh, so who made your cartridge belt? I don't fucking know.
Right? I wore it.
Why would I
give a shit? I got a new one. Exactly. It's a utilitarian item. And that's why it's just so funny, It's like, how do you really look at history? Like, who made the oil filter on your car that you replaced 2 years ago? It's just, I don't know. I got
Jokes on you, bitch. I don't replace that thing.
Exactly. Yeah. 2 engines seized. But, it's just, it's interesting, how these things get lost to history and how it takes so much effort to figure it out, Yeah. So maybe one day we'll have an answer why they got rid of bandoliers. And I'd be very interested to know that.
So we should circle back, and I think we should give our ratings. So we've done IMFDB.
I think we're at the end of it, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. Closing thoughts, like I say, I think it's a good, solid movie. I recommend it to anybody. I liked it. Even like stuff that we're talking about that is very, far-fetched, such as the wife coming to the line and everything like that. Even though that's very far-fetched and whatnot, I still think within the story, within the narrative, it works. Everything I thought worked really well in terms of what they were trying to depict and what they were trying to say about this event. So I'm going to give it a 8 out of 10.
It tried very hard, and I appreciate that. And it didn't overly try. And it's like you were saying earlier, like the acting is really good. The writing is actually not terrible. There's some things where I'm just like, but like whatever, that happens at literally every film you watch. As far as like getting this event out there that did happen, whether it's more or less than what they portrayed on the film, who knows? But as long as you get people to like kind of realize that this did happen and these were real people that experienced this, I like that a lot. And as far as entertainment factor, I honest to God, like the whole thing was like just kind of okay. Like the whole thing, like it wasn't really great as far as like the cinematography, just the overall like vibe of watching this. It wasn't super great. It wasn't shitty. It was just kind of like a very solid, like in the middle, if that makes sense. Like it wasn't, yeah, it was just like, okay, cool. But yeah, I'll try and stay on track. I'm thinking about Bandoliers right now. No, seriously, like I'm just like, it's like in the middle of the night, you know, your brain is putting you to sleep.
Yep.
And you're like, all right, fuck off. Good night. Yep, good night, brain. And all of a sudden he goes, why didn't Tarzan have a beard? And you're like, fuck. What?
God.
And now you
What?
can't
You know,
sleep. Yeah.
Like just dumb shit like that. But so as far as the entertainment value and again getting people to recognize that this thing happened, with all the shortcomings, the little things, whatever, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. So it's not bad at all. It's worth the watch. They could have done so much better, but that's also my opinion. That's not like, and I know how hard it is to make a fucking film. Like it takes a lot of work, and like they put a lot of work into this. You could tell, and so I can't gig on it too bad. So 7 out of 10. Yep.
Yeah, you know, to build on your points, I felt a bad time trying to really overanalyze this movie because again, it does what it sets out to do. You
Yep.
know, it's not like the Thin Red Line where it's like, you know, super duper cinematic and, you know, misunderstood or whatever the fuck that movie is. But it's also not like, you know,
Let's
really
try to be deep here. And why are we trying to be deep? Why do I sound like Dr. Phil? Oh, wait. We're making a war movie here. Carry on,
I'm going to
Brian.
stare at things and they're going to talk to me.
Who's doing this?
Am I a man?
Is this what it is? Is it reality? And we go back to Brian now, because I rudely interrupted him with some deep thoughts.
That might be a
Carry
little bit of
on.
foreshadow to
Hey.
everybody listening. So
You may think that's funny, but like that's not an exaggeration of the Thin Red Line.
No, it's not. It's like why the fuck? Pick one. Make it
Yeah.
a deep film. But anyway, I'm sorry. I'm not gonna get on that rant. Brian, I really interrupted you with some deep thoughts. Deep thoughts.
well,
Deep-
see now
deep thoughts here.
now I'm thinking like about Bandoliers myself. It's infectious.
It's how I roll. It's contagious. It's not good. It's fucked.
It's in the air. Thank you, Mr. Leahy.
All right.
But,
My bad, dude. My bad, dude.
No worries. But no, it's it's a movie. That's like
No,
like,
I
it's
agree
stupid.
and I know. Yep.
It's
I know what you mean too,
yeah,
which is funny.
It's a movie, you know, and watch it. Like it's in my opinion, it's the best Christmas war movie if there can be that, you know, like out there, and it goes out there to tell a story and it delivers, and yeah, you know, you walk away with something. If it's not like, oh, you know, cool French uniforms, it's like, wow, this is amazing how people can, you know, overcome their differences in a crisis, you know, in a situation that nobody wants to be in. And the film just has so many scenes like that. Like, again, one of my favorite scenes is where the wife shows up at the manor or whatever, and she goes to ask about where her husband is, and they don't speak German, and she has to speak French, you know. It's like the little things like that that really put this movie in that time frame of late 1914, early 1915, and just get that psyche of, you know, occupation, dealing with places you don't want to be. Because really, nobody in this film wants to be where they are. They all want to be home with their families, you know, not in this horrible situation that they have no idea is about to get way worse for 3 years, you know, or 4 years actually. So it's a very good movie. You know, that being said, I would give it an 8 out of 10. The only reason I would give it a little bit less is that personally I would have done things a little differently, you know, but that's just me being a filmmaker. But it's a good film, you know, it's really worth a watch, and it's going to get you interested in something, or you're going to figure something out with it. So putting all of our scores into the computer that will tell us when the German High Command will break through the Western Front, we get a 7.6 out of 10. So again,
All right.
Not bad.
you know, it's worth watching, you know?
As far as Christmas war movies go, it's way the fuck better than A Midnight Clear, if you know about that.
Oh yeah, or what's the one with David Bowie from the 80s?
It's a David Bowie war movie.
The David Bowie war movie in Burma, where he's.
Oh,
Christmas
I know about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot. I forgot what it's called, but I know about that now. Now that you mention it.
Oh
yeah,
boy.
like.
Sometimes I forget that David Bowie was
called-
also an actor.
Yes, for like a little bit of time.
A little bit in the 80s. Yeah.
Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. You know, that's the one with David Bowie. But yeah, this is like the best, World War One. This is the best, Christmas war film, and it's really worth your time. So
Yeah.
Well, to sum it up, guys, thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, whatever your denomination, whatever you celebrate. We hope that you enjoy this time. Happy New Year. And just to say this, we've had 31 episodes this year. We've had a lot of fun doing this, and we really look forward to doing this into the next year. We hope that you guys have enjoyed the ride. And, we have some cool stuff coming down the pipeline, which we hope that you'll enjoy. And we hope that you join us next year for some really cool reviews, cool experiences. Maybe we'll figure out why the Germans got rid of bandoliers. There's mysteries to be solved here. And thank you so much for anybody that's been listening for us. It's been a lot of fun. So
Yes. Joyeux Noel. Merry Christmas.
Joyeux Noel.
Joyeux Noel.
Joyeux Noel, everybody.
By the way,
Why not?
this screen that I have, like on IMFDB, that grenade looks like a giant ball sack.
It does, yeah. It's like a
And
rusty
it's
old
like-
nutsack.
Rusty old
rusty.
Santa's old rusty nuts.
Rusty old fucking sex toy.
Just like
Rusty
Nathan's
nuts.
old nuts are freezing off. He's going to go over to Tajikistan right now. So
Turkmenistan. Come on.
stand to stands. Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully the Air Force doesn't shoot him down. Those old MiGs, they got some tricks. So
They got some good food over in the stands, though.
very true. So
Very true.
anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and
Joyeux
see you guys
Noël.
later.
Joyeux Noel, everybody.
Joyeux.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to leave a rating. Otherwise, Mel Gibson won't stop screaming. If you like this content, make sure to check out our Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram pages. If you want to directly support our work, make sure to check out our Patreon. All these links are in the description below. Until the next time, Scuttlebutt out.
It's like in the middle of the night, your brain is putting you to sleep,
Yep.
and you're like, "All right, fuck off. Good night. Yep, good night, brain." And all of a sudden it goes, "Why didn't Tarzan have a beard?" And you're like, "Fuck! What?"
God.
And now you
What?
can't sleep.
Holy fucking shit.
Where's the money, Lebowski?